Hi folks, I'm Craig Taylor, and as always a huge thanks for joining me here on my YouTube channel, the Bushcraft Padawan. Map reading and land navigation can be a tricky subject at times to get your head around, both the theory of it as well as getting outside and actually putting that theory into practice, the practical side of it. Now sometimes I think it's because the concepts and the theories and the things from a theoretical perspective that we consider when we're talking about map reading and land navigation can be so completely distal and alien and different to what we're used to perhaps thinking about in our daily day-to-day day job lives, that it can be sometimes hard to make that transition and start thinking about things from a completely different perspective. I think that's one of the reasons. I think another reason is, and having taught map reading for donkey's years, one of the things that I sometimes find people struggle getting their heads around is just the terminology, the words, the phrases that are used. The world of map reading and navigation doesn't make life easy for itself because it uses some words and phrases that are incredibly similar to one another, both in terms of how they look, how they sound, how they read, but actually what they mean can be very, very different indeed. So what I want to do in this video is just explore three of those words, those phrases that do sound incredibly similar, do mean very different things. They're not common everyday words in most people's terminology, and it's important, I think, for us to understand what they mean, what they don't mean, to help us build upon those foundations when it comes to map reading and land navigation, and in particular, in terms of these three words, compass work. So let me briefly outline what these three words are, really high level, and then we're going to pick them apart as the video moves on. These three words then: deviation, inclination, declination. Those three words again: deviation, inclination, declination. I mean, could we have come up with three more similarly sounding words that actually mean very different things when you pull them apart? Probably not. So let's have a dive into each one of those in a bit more detail, talk about what they are, what they aren't, and we'll find out more as the video moves on. Deviation in its simplest form is what happens when something detracts your needle, influences the magnetic needle on your compass to point other than along the magnetic lines, depending on where you are on the earth, and in the general direction of magnetic north. It's something that affects and forces that needle to deviate from where it really should be pointing. I have recorded a video that touches on this previously, and I'm linking to it up in the top right hand corner of your screen. These things that could cause this deviation, they could be natural. They could be man-made around us. They could be man-made that are on us, that we're wearing, that we're carrying. But do check out that video that's been in the top right-hand corner of your screen, and you'll find out a little bit more what we mean by deviation. Up next, let's talk about inclination. The Earth has a magnetic field. Depending on where you are on the Earth's surface, that magnetic field may increase in intensity, it may decrease. The direction of that magnetic field may move from one direction to another. So wherever you are on the Earth's surface, there is a likelihood that if you were to move somewhere else on the Earth's surface, there is a likelihood, or there is a possibility, that's probably a better word, a possibility that the intensity and direction of that magnetic field might change. Let's not forget that it's that magnetic field that the magnetic needle in your compass is pointing to, or pointing along. Let's put the compass to one side. My finger there is the needle, is the balance on which the magnetic needle in your compass sits on and swivels around. So this twig is the red magnetic needle, if we like, and it's sitting on that pin there. Depending on where you are in the Earth's surface, this magnetic field, if it's stronger or weaker, that will have an effect on your magnetic needle. Let's move a little closer. It may cause it to dip in one direction or the other. Now, I'm grossly exaggerating this here, but you can imagine within a compass that that dip doesn't have to be a great deal before all of a sudden your needle is scraping on the bottom of your compass housing, potentially affecting the direction it's trying to point in and the accuracy of what you are taking from that compass. That's inclination. Now, depending on where you're going on the Earth's surface, you can actually buy compasses that are balanced to that part of the Earth's surface. In fact, there's one or two manufacturers in recent years have actually created a compass that doesn't need balancing. It will work wherever you are on the Earth's surface. So if you're doing a lot of traveling or you don't have a lot of money and you can't buy a compass every time you go somewhere different on the Earth's surface, you don't need to. That needle will not be affected. Again, gross exaggeration here, but it will not be affected by the strength or direction of the Earth's magnetic field if you're using one of those globally balanced compasses. If you're not, there is a potential that that needle can dip, can scrape on the bottom of your compass housing, or can be affected by the bottom of your compass housing, degrading the accuracy of what the compass is trying to tell you. That's inclination. And let's talk about declination. Declination can be known by many different things. When I was in the army, we used to call it GMA, or grid magnetic angle. It can also be called MV or MAGVAR, magnetic variation. MAGVAR, MV, GMA, grid magnetic angle, declination. Whew, they're all the same thing. See what I mean about confusing matters with different terminology? What is it in layman's terms then? Well, here's a map. This map has grid lines. The lines that run up and down, top to bottom of the map, are running up and down in the general direction of grid north. Grid north. There's a compass. The red needle in that compass is pointing along the local magnetic fields, ultimately leading to magnetic north. Grid north, magnetic north. Magnetic north, grid north. Depending on where you are on the Earth's surface, depending on how old your map is, depending on when you are taking a magnetic bearing and working that to be a grid bearing, or vice versa, depending on a lot of factors, there may be a difference between these two. There may be a difference between these two. Now, at the moment of recording this video, which is early March 2019, I have to check what year I'm in, I'm getting old. Early March 2019, there's a lot of talk online around the fact that magnetic north is moving. It's moving quicker than it has done in previous years. That's confusing a lot of matters. That means that the difference in these angles may not be as great as they used to be, or maybe greater than they used to be. I guess what I'm saying here is, be aware, if you are working a grid bearing from a map and you are applying that out on the ground like I am today to a magnetic bearing, you may need to make an adjustment, a small calculation to get from one to the other. You may need to. More details are contained in the marginal information on most maps. If you've taken a bearing out on the ground, like I am today, with a compass, you have a magnetic bearing. If you want to apply that to a map and convert it to a grid bearing, you know where I'm going here, you may need to do a calculation between the two to work from a grid bearing to a magnetic bearing. That difference between the two angles is known by many things, but as I said at the beginning of this video, declination tends to be the word that is most commonly used, and declination sounds a lot like inclination, sounds a lot like deviation. That's the point that I wanted to get across in this video. There can be some very similarly sounding, confusing words used, particularly around the use of compasses, and we've looked at 3 of them today. Let's just recap what they were. Variation, the way that your compass is affected by things around it, natural things, man-made things, things you might even be carrying. Deviation. Inclination. Remember, where depending on where you are on the Earth's surface and the type of compass you're using, your compass needle may be dipping one way or the other, affecting the accuracy. That is inclination. And then the third one we've looked at was declination. Declination being that difference between grid north and magnetic north, and vice versa, between magnetic north and grid north, and that you may need to apply a calculation between those two when you're working from one direction to the other, or from one map to compass, compass to map. Hopefully that's I was going to say hopefully that's answered a few questions, but actually hopefully what it's done is perhaps raised more questions in your head. If it has, do please drop them down in the comments below, either on Facebook or Twitter or YouTube, wherever it is that you're watching this. More hopefully, it's actually prompted you to go and have a look at these terms yourself online. Remember, deviation, inclination, declination. Go and have a look at those online. Do your own research about what they are. Figure out whether they are important to what you do in the outdoors and when you use a map and compass or not. But even if they're not, hopefully this has given you another insight into a small, important area of map reading and land navigation that doesn't get talked about a lot because it's not very sexy. It's kind of down there in the weeds in the theoretical side of things, but incredibly important to recognise the difference between 3 very similar sounding words: deviation, inclination, declination. Thank you ever so much for watching, folks. If you've got this far, it's been a very wordy, waffly video today, but an important one. I hope you'll agree. Thank you for sticking with it. If you're already a subscriber, then you can have ignored that subscribe button that's been in the bottom right-hand corner of your screen since the beginning of this video. If you're not a subscriber, hopefully you haven't ignored it. Hopefully you have found this video to be valuable, want to see more from the channel, and you've already clicked on, if not you're about to click on, that red button as well. Whatever you are, subscriber or non-subscriber, thank you for watching. If you've liked the video, please do like it. These videos get a lot of views, but they don't get a lot of likes. Now, I'm not suggesting that if you don't like it, you click the thumbs down button, but of course it is there. But if you did like the video, if it was useful, please do consider hitting that like button. It helps YouTube's algorithm surface my videos to more people. And of course, if you wouldn't mind sharing the video if you think people in your network would find it useful, incredibly helpful as well. I've waffled on long enough. The weekend is upon us. Have a great one. I'll see you very soon. Take care. Cheers.